1. Introduction. My name is Jenny. I am 24 years old. My life is very difficult right now. I work as a waitress in a busy cafe in the city. Every day, I work for many hours. My feet always hurt, and I am usually very tired when I finish my work. I do not have much money, and I am often worried about my future. I live in a very small house with 10 other people. It is a crowded place. There is never any silence, and it is always messy. I feel very lonely in that house. I have no family to talk to because they told me to leave home many years ago. I feel like I am all alone in this big, loud world. One rainy Tuesday, an old man came into the cafe. He sat at my table and ordered his breakfast. He ate his food very slowly. He looked like a kind person, but he also looked very sad. When it was time for him to pay his bill, he looked at me with tired eyes. He did not have any cash for a tip. He looked sorry. He reached into his pocket and took out a small piece of paper. It was a lottery ticket. He told me that he was sorry he had no money to give me. He asked me to take the lottery ticket instead. I looked at the old man and felt sorry for him too. I smiled at him and took the ticket. I did not think that the ticket was special. I did not believe in luck, and I never played the lottery. I took it because I wanted to be kind to the man. I put the ticket in my pocket and forgot about it. I went back to work and continued to serve the other customers. That night, I went home to my crowded room. I felt very tired and sad. I thought about my life and wondered if things would ever get better. I did not know that this small piece of paper would soon change everything for me. I was just a girl working in a cafe, trying to survive in a city that did not seem to care about me. I sat on my bed and thought about the old man. I hoped that he would have a better day tomorrow. I closed my eyes and tried to fall asleep, dreaming of a life that was quiet and happy. 2. A big surprise. The following week, I sat alone on the floor of my crowded room. The house was very noisy, so I went to the corner to be by myself. I took out my phone to check the lottery numbers from the television. I looked at the screen, then I looked at the small piece of paper in my hand. I looked again, and then a third time. My heart stopped beating for a moment. Every single number on my ticket was exactly the same as the winning numbers. I sat there in silence because I could not believe what I was seeing. I had won $2 million. My hands began to shake as I stared at the ticket. I felt a strange mix of emotions. I was happy, but I was also very afraid. I knew that $2 million was a life-changing amount of money. I thought about my roommates and the people I worked with. If they found out, would they treat me differently? I decided that I had to be very careful. I carefully folded the ticket and hid it inside my left shoe. I pushed the shoe deep under my bed where nobody would look. That night, I could not sleep at all. I stayed awake and watched the door, worried that someone might try to take my secret away. The next morning, I went to the main lottery office in the city. The building was very big and felt very official. I spoke to a woman behind a large desk. She looked at my ticket, and her eyes went wide. She told me that I was indeed the winner of the grand prize. I felt a wave of relief, but then she gave me some bad news. She explained that there was a strict rule for winners of this amount. She told me that I had to sign a document and take a professional photograph for the local news. I told her that I did not want to be in the news. I wanted to stay quiet and keep my life private. However, the woman shook her head. She said that it was required by the law and that I had no other choice. I felt my stomach turn. I knew that once my face was on the television, everything would change. I agreed to the photo, but I left the office feeling very nervous. I walked home slowly, wondering how I could keep my new life safe from the world. 3. New friends. The news about my lottery win changed my life in a very fast and negative way. Before the news, my roommates rarely spoke to me. We lived in a small, messy apartment, and everyone was usually busy with their own problems. However, after my face appeared on the television screen, everything became different. When I walked through the door that evening, all 10 of my roommates were waiting for me in the living room. They were all sitting on the old sofa, looking at me with strange, bright eyes. At first, they acted very kind. They told me how happy they were for my success. But it did not take long for their true feelings to appear. One girl, who usually ignored me, stood up and walked toward me. She put her arm around my shoulder and smiled in a way that felt very cold. She told me that we were best friends and that she had a problem. She asked me for $5,000 to pay off her old debts. Another roommate quickly followed her. He told me that he needed a new car to find a better job and asked if I could buy it for him. I felt very uncomfortable. I was not a person to them anymore. I felt like a piece of meat that they wanted to share. I felt bad, so I gave them some money, thinking it would make them happy and stop the requests. I was wrong. The next day, they wanted much more. They seemed to watch my every move. If I went to the kitchen to make coffee, someone followed me to ask for money. If I went to the bathroom, they waited outside the door to talk about their financial needs. It was impossible to have any privacy. I started to realize the truth about the people around me. They did not care about my feelings, my exhaustion from work, or my fear of the future. They did not ask how I was doing or if I was happy. They only cared about my bank account. Their smiles were fake, and their interest in me was only because of the $2 million. I felt very lonely, even though I was in a room full of people. I realized that my life had changed, but it had not become better. Instead, I was surrounded by people who only wanted to take from me. I needed to escape, but I did not know where to go or who I could actually trust. 4. A new family. My life felt very complicated after the news of my win. I was still hiding from my roommates when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered it anyway. To my great surprise, it was my mother. I had not spoken to her for 6 years. We had a very difficult relationship, and she had told me to leave her house when I was younger. Now, her voice sounded soft and kind. She told me that she missed me very much and wanted to have dinner with me. I wanted to believe her. I felt a deep, empty space in my heart where my family should have been. I decided to give them another chance. I arrived at their home with hope in my heart. They welcomed me with many smiles and warm hugs. My mother cooked a beautiful meal, and for a few hours, I felt like I finally had a place to belong. We talked about the past and laughed at old stories. I started to think that maybe things were changing for the better. However, the mood changed after we finished eating. My father cleared his throat and placed a piece of paper on the table. It was a document for a very expensive house that he wanted to buy. He looked at me with a serious expression and said that because I was rich now, I had a responsibility to take care of my family. He expected me to pay for everything. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. My mother stopped smiling and waited for my answer. I looked at their faces and realized the truth. They did not invite me for dinner because they loved me or wanted to be a family again. They only wanted me back because they saw an opportunity to get my money. I felt truly heartbroken. I had been lonely for so many years, and I wanted to trust them, but it was clear that they saw me as a bank account instead of a daughter. I stood up and told them that I could not help them with this request. Their faces turned cold immediately. They stopped being sweet and started shouting at me. I realized that my own family was just like my roommates. They only cared about the $2 million. I left their house feeling more alone than ever before. I knew then that I had to leave the city to find a real life far away from people who only wanted my wealth. 5. A new place. I cried for many hours after I left my parents' house. I felt very sad and alone. My roommates and my family only saw me as a bank account. I realized that I could not stay in the city anymore. The noise of the cars and the people made me feel tired. I wanted to be somewhere where no one knew my name or my bank balance. I decided to pack my things and leave everything behind. I put my clothes into one small bag and got into my car. I drove for 6 hours away from the city lights. I wanted to find a place that felt quiet and safe. Finally, I arrived in a beautiful, small town near a blue lake. The air was fresh and clean, and the people seemed very friendly. I found a small farm for sale on the edge of the woods. It had a wooden house and a large garden. I knew immediately that this was the place for me. I bought the property with the money I had won. To keep my secret, I decided to change how I looked. I went to a salon in the next town and cut my long hair short. I also dyed it a darker color. I stopped wearing my expensive clothes and bought simple shirts and jeans at a local shop. Now, when I looked in the mirror, I did not see the famous lottery winner. I saw a new person who lived in the countryside. For the first time in many years, my heart felt light. I spent my days learning how to grow vegetables and flowers. I planted carrots, tomatoes, and green beans in the warm soil. In the evenings, I sat on my porch and watched the beautiful sunset over the lake. There were no people asking me for money. There were no phones ringing with fake promises from my family. I felt a deep sense of peace in my soul. I learned that I did not need $1 million to be happy. I only needed a quiet place where I could be myself. Every morning, I woke up with a smile because I knew that I was finally free from my difficult past. I was no longer the girl who was scared of the future. I was a farmer who loved the quiet life. My new home was simple, but it was exactly what I needed to heal my heart. 6. A good man. Life on the farm was very different from my life in the city. Every morning, the sun woke me up and the air smelled like fresh grass. My work was hard, but it made me feel strong. One afternoon, a truck stopped at the gate of my farm. A man stepped out. He was a local carpenter named Leo. I had asked him to help me fix my wooden fence, which was very old and falling down. When I first saw Leo, I noticed his strong hands and his calm, kind smile. He did not look at me like the people in the city did. He did not look at my clothes or my hair. He just looked at the fence and then at me with a friendly, honest expression. Throughout the day, Leo worked hard on the repairs. We talked while he worked, but he never asked me about my past or why I moved to this quiet place. He talked about the beauty of the trees, the habits of the birds, and the changing colors of the sky. It was nice to listen to someone who cared about simple things. I felt like I could finally be myself. A few weeks later, the work was finished, but Leo still came to visit. We spent our evenings sitting on my wooden porch, watching the stars appear in the dark sky. We shared stories about our favorite books and our dreams for the future. One night, the air was warm and quiet. We were laughing about a funny story when he suddenly stopped. He looked into my eyes and leaned toward me. He kissed me softly, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt a deep sense of peace. In his arms, I did not feel like a woman with $2 million or a person with a secret. I felt like a normal woman who was finally safe. I realized that I had been running away for a long time, but with Leo, I wanted to stay in one place. He was a good man, and for the first time since I left the city, I felt that I had found something truly valuable. I was not just a girl with a lottery ticket anymore. I was a person who was beginning to feel happy again. I knew that my life was changing in a beautiful way, and I felt thankful for this quiet town and for the kind man who sat beside me. 7. The secret is out. Life in the small town felt perfect for many months. I walked through the streets without fear, and I enjoyed the simple work on my farm. I felt like a different person. I was no longer the girl who had $2 million. I was just Jenny, the woman who lived at the end of the road. However, secrets are often difficult to keep forever. One sunny afternoon, I went to the local grocery store to buy some bread and milk. The shop was busy with many people from the town. While I stood in line, an older woman walked toward me. She stopped suddenly and looked at my face for a long time. Then, she pulled an old, folded newspaper from her bag. She pointed at the front page and gasped loudly. It was the photo of me from the lottery office. The woman looked at the paper and then at me. She shouted to everyone in the store, "Look, it is the girl from the news. She is the lottery winner." The store became very quiet. Everyone turned to look at me. I felt my face turn hot. I could hear them whispering my name and talking about the $2 million. I felt like I was back in the big city again. My heart beat very fast. I did not buy my groceries. I dropped my basket on the floor and ran out of the store as fast as I could. I ran all the way to my farm and locked the door. I sat in my kitchen and cried for a long time. I was so scared. I thought that Leo would change his mind about me. I believed he would think I was a stranger or someone who had lied to him. I felt like my peaceful life was ending. Later that evening, I heard a knock at my door. It was Leo. He looked calm, but his eyes were serious. He walked into the kitchen and saw the old newspaper sitting on my table. He picked it up and looked at the photo of me. Then, he looked at my face. The room was silent for a long time. Finally, he sat down next to me. He took a deep breath and asked me about my past in a very soft voice. He asked if this was why I had been so quiet and why I had moved to this town. I did not know what to say to him. I was afraid to lose the only person who made me feel safe. 8. A happy life. I sat on my wooden porch with Leo. I told him the entire truth about my life. I spoke about my old, crowded room and the people who only wanted my money. I told him about the day I won the lottery and how it made me feel very lonely instead of happy. I cried as I explained why I ran away to this quiet town. I was afraid that he would see me differently now that he knew the truth about my past. Leo listened to every word without moving. When I finished, he took my hands in his. He told me that he did not care about the $2 million. He said he only cared about the woman who worked on the farm and watched the sunset with him. He loved me for my soul, not for my bank account. In that moment, I finally understood something very important. Money is only paper. It can buy a big house, but it cannot buy a real home or true love. I felt a heavy weight leave my heart. I decided to change how I used my money. I did not want to hide it anymore, but I did not want it to control my life. I started to use my money to help the people in my new town. I gave money to the local school so the children could have new books. I helped the poor families who lived near the lake. Helping others made me feel better than having millions of dollars ever did. I am 25 years old now. I am not the scared girl who lived in a crowded room anymore. I have a small farm, a beautiful garden, and a kind man who loves me every single day. The past is behind me, and I am not afraid of the future. I have finally found the life I always wanted. I have peace, I have purpose, and most importantly, I have a truly happy heart.